LBC. Lots to get through today. We're going to start on the other side of the Atlantic with the remarkable. I've run out of adjectives, actually. I can't say remarkable, astonishing, unprecedented. What's that word he invented? Unprecedented. Run out of adjectives. How can you possibly describe an official press spokesman standing up at a White House press conference and lying through his teeth? It's quite incredible. And then the paid counsellor, this Kellyanne Conway woman, who, well, footage emerged over the weekend of her warning about the absolute horrors that would follow if Donald Trump was ever elected, but that was before she was on the payroll. She's on the payroll now, and she told a reputable news organisation that there is something other than facts. You have facts, and then you have alternative facts. It'd be funny if it wasn't so frightening. Today's not a day for an argument about whether or not you find Donald Trump's bizarre brand of demagoguery attractive or not. I think we can all agree that these are two massive lies. The argument that the inauguration crowd was the biggest that there had ever been is palpably absurd. It's as if they're trying to redefine counting. You have a White House press spokesman standing up and effectively trying to persuade the press, the assembled fourth estate, that 2 + 2 = 5. That is what happened this weekend. And I still sort of, as I say the words out loud, I still find myself reeling slightly at the sheer scale of the con. It's incredible. Unless you read history. And if you read history, it's quite remarkably banal. It's so familiar. It's happened so many times before. Do you know, in the 18th century in Russia, there's some historical dispute about just how widespread this was, but there was something called Potemkin villages, or a Potemkin village, which was, you know, when you watch a film about a film and you see the street is literally just the facade. You know, the set has just literally got the fronts of the houses there, and behind it, it's just scaffolding. There's nothing behind it. That was a Potemkin village. And they used to erect them at the roadside whenever Catherine the Great was making her way through the empire, so that she'd believe things were a lot better than they really were. You could sort of hide starving peasants behind these facades. The Potemkin village being a kind of opposite of what Donald Trump is doing. This was where the tools of government, if you like, tried to hide reality from the actual leader. Now you've got the tools of government trying to hide reality from the actual population. And then this woman, Kellyanne Conway, goes out on telly to describe the lies as alternative facts. That's actually incredible. But again, I've run out of adjectives. How do you describe them? Incredible. I mean, alternative facts. It's as if everything that we've ever taken for granted in our slightly, what would you call it? It's a slightly complacent Western way. Tell you what, that Joni Mitchell song, You Don't Know What You've Got Till It's Gone, has really resonated quite so powerfully around the Western world as it does at the moment. But in a slightly complacent way, you kind of presume that if 100 people turn up for something and a journalist says there's 100 people here, then you kind of presume that if the guy who organised it stands up and says that actually there were 10,000 people here, then something breaks, right? Something just snaps, some alarm goes off. That's what we're discovering now. It doesn't. Nothing happened. That there isn't some sort of objective moral compass that starts bleeping furiously when these sort of calumnies go mainstream. That's it, isn't it? Sorry to use the microphone as an attempt to work out my own thoughts on these remarkable and unprecedented issues, but I think that's what it is. I don't understand how you could be different from me on this. Not lots of other stuff I do, but on this one, as an official spokesperson, lies through his teeth. Literally lies. Not just embellishes or exaggerates or spins, but literally tries to argue that black is white. You're waiting for something to happen. History's taught us that it doesn't happen. History's taught us that there isn't some sort of big boot that comes down from the sky to stamp out these untruths. History has taught us, long before George Orwell wrote 1984, history had taught us that these lies go unchallenged. And the challenges are dismissed by cynicism. Oh, I don't trust journalists. Let's have a little listen, just so that you know I'm not exaggerating. Let's listen first to Sean Spicer. You've seen the pictures of the inauguration crowds. Look, it doesn't matter whether they're big or small. To be fair, Washington, D.C. is historically a very Democrat city. Massive majority of people there would have voted for Hillary Clinton. You're not going to pay a fortune to come up from the boondocks and spend the day in DC. It's not that surprising that the crowd wasn't that big. It doesn't really reflect anything except the distance from DC that your core Trump support resides, both, I would argue, geographically and politically. But here is Sean Spicer, the White House press spokesman, on those crowds.
Photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times printed a photograph showing that a misrepresentation of the crowd in the original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong. The president was also at the Central, as you know, the president was at the Central Intelligence Agency today and greeted by a raucous overflow crowd of some 400 plus CIA employees. There were over 1,000 requests to attend, prompting the president to note that he'll have to come back to greet the rest. The employees were ecstatic that he's the new commander-in-chief, and he delivered them a powerful and important message. He told them he has their back, and they were grateful for that.
There's still some reports, which I haven't been able to verify. That's kind of what you say if you're a proper journalist, that there were people in that room and the security services were confused as to who they were, and that all the clapping and the cheering comes from people that Donald Trump brought with him. Now, the thing is, that's quite possibly true, right? Because you've just heard a man claim that it was the largest audience ever for an inauguration. That's just counting. That is literally claiming that 2 + 2 = 5. I've got to stop saying literally when I'm not describing literal things. 2 + 2 = 5. Okay? Just count. And the pictures were not framed. The pictures were not manipulated. The pictures were not photoshopped. There are lies all over the world. All politicians have been caught with their pants down in some ways. But this is absolutely not open for dispute. This is numbers. And then the Park Service reported that they'd seen surprisingly low levels of activity, and they shut down the Park Service. They banned the Park Service in Washington, D.C. from releasing details, an actual, if you will, a government department. So what does the paid spokesperson do when they go out to the networks? Well, this is what they do.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did
Yes,
not answer the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods. So
alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods. This isn't even debatable. She tried to describe falsehoods as alternative facts, as if you have truth and then you have something else that has a different name but isn't lie. And the question really that we'll have a crack at today, and we can come at it from all angles, is whether or not you think he's going to get away with it. I mean, that Spicer speech was quite incredible. Everyone's got bills to pay. Everybody's got, food to put on the table. I'm not going to criticize people for taking jobs in organizations that have, I suppose you'd have to say, tarnished reputations or anything like that. Be a bit pot kettle black these days. But what do you do? What do you actually do when a man stands up in front of the civilized world, the Western world, and says 2 + 2 = 6? And then they send someone else out there to say, well, look, obviously you believe that 2 + 2 = 4, but there are alternative facts. Stop being so overly dramatic, Chuck. There are alternative facts where 2 + 2 does actually equal 6. 13 minutes after 10. What do you think explains the ability to pull off a con like this? 0345 6060 973. How does it actually work? When people watch that or listen to that, they hear someone saying 2 + 2 = 6, and they go, yeah, you know what, maybe they do. Yeah, there's so much fake news out there. Maybe 2 + 2 does equal 6. I'm fascinated by the mechanics of it. by the actual psychological mechanics of it. 2 + 2 = 6. Yeah, God, yeah, you shut up with you. The country's had enough of experts. 2 + 2 used to equal 4, but this is a new dawn. We're making America great again. And in the new America, 2 + 2 = 27 today. 6 yesterday. Never 4, though. Never 4. How does it work? I mean, how does that not break something? How does that not set off some sort of international alarm bell? I don't know quite what the question is that I want to ask you today, because it's such uncharted territory, this. I've only ever seen it in history books. The madness of crowds, they call it sometimes. But this isn't just crowds. To go on national television and essentially try to rebrand an utter falsehood as an alternative fact. How does it work? I don't get it. 0345 6060973 is the number you need. And I, at the moment, think he's going to pull it off. I can't quite see how, if the outrage isn't already there. We said this a lot during the campaign, didn't we? If that doesn't kick him into touch, nothing will. I thought mocking the disabled journalist or claiming that John McCain wasn't a proper military hero. This is from an effective draft dodger, because he got caught, because he got taken prisoner in Vietnam. I presumed all of these things would break some sort of bond, some sort of, what would you call it? I tell you what I would call it, civilization. Actually, I presumed that these affronts to the most fundamental foundations of what we fondly describe as civilization, something had to snap all the way through it, you know? Boasting about being a sex offender, well, that'll do it. That'll snap it. But I can make some sense of that, because the message he was delivering about, or to inadequate, angry, fearful people, and in some cases just misled and misinformed people, you could understand why the message maybe is going to drown out your reservations about being a sex offender or an abuser of disabled people, because he's so vile about Mexicans and Muslims. I'm going to forgive all that. But when you actually start lying, on your first day in office, you actually send somebody out to tell the American people that 2 + 2 = 5, and nothing happens. I find that, well, look, as an anorak and a political geek, I find it absolutely fascinating, and in a strange sense, quite exciting as an academic exercise. But our Prime Minister is going to visit this guy later in the week, when really any politician with an ounce of dignity or decorum, even if it involved some sort of suffering on her part or on her country's part, should be standing up and stating in unequivocal terms, you can't do deals with liars. And this lie is so huge. 0345 6060973 is the number you need. How does it work? How does it actually work psychologically, do you think? And I think he's going to pull it off. I don't see how this ends. I don't see what he would have to do in order for what? For the bells to start ringing? For the sirens to start sounding? See what I mean? It's fascinating, right? Unfortunately, it's happening on our watch. We're not examining this through the luxury of a university lecture. This is happening on our watch. I'm a journalist. You know, if I was American, I might have been in that room. And to sit there and watch someone say that black is white, that truth is lies, that 2 + 2 = 6, and not feel spooked, not feel scared, not feel in any way betrayed or... Go on, help us out. Let's try and work it out today together. 10:17 is the time.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that absolute load of rubbish. That man presented himself as a journalist who was shocked at what he called a pack of lies coming from the White House. He mentioned all sorts of past things like the mocking the handicapped reporter. That was something that happened 15 years before. I don't believe that Trump even knew that the man was handicapped. He'd never set eyes on the man. He didn't know who he was. He was just mentioning it, and he made gestures that he makes all the time. Now, that man has just suggested that the Prime Minister of the UK shouldn't go and speak to Trump because he's a liar. And all this is based on a trick photograph that was presented by CNN that has been shown to be a fake news story. It's been shown to be fake. It was another lie from CNN. They did the same thing to Nancy Sinatra. They accused her of telling Trump that he mustn't use her father's song for his inauguration ball, when in fact he didn't. It was actually a song that was written by Paul Anka. It wasn't her father's song, but she has said that she didn't say it. She has called CNN a liar.